right. Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate you all making it out to this session. We're going to be talking about custom video game creation and custom pinball. And the title of this session is called Pimp Your Ride. With custom, like I said, custom video arcade and custom pinball. So we've got the pleasure of having four very distinct guests here on the panel today, and we'll go ahead and start and name everybody off and kind of give a quick background, and then we'll talk a little bit about what goes into making custom arcade games, and then we'll also talk about making custom pinball games as well. So first here to my left is Mr. Britt Briscoe, who has created a arcade game called Default Dan. And from what I understand, Britt, this game is actually on location right now. It's being played out in the public, and from what I understand, it's getting some really good reviews, and it's going to be interesting to see some discussion around it based upon how you've designed that and some of the choices you've made and everything like that. So appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
okay. Next, we have Mr. Josh Chudnovsky, and he has created a game called Castle Kong, okay? And this game is also on location at Joystick Game Bar, and it's getting some very good reviews as well, so it's going to be interesting to hear some information around that. And then next over, we have Mr. Jimmy Liam, who has created a custom pinball machine called Demolition Man 2000. And then sitting to to your all's far right is Mr. Paul Kiefert, and you probably know him from the Pins and Vid DVD series that he has co-hosted with Mr. Al Warner. And so, guys, thank you for being on the panel here today. All right, so guys, I just want to take I'm sorry.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind.
Thank you. So, Britt, we'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about Default Dan? What you were after in designing this game? Kind of talk about some of the play mechanics and how it differs from kind of your run-of-the-mill arcade game that's out today.
Sure. So, Default Dan really came out of a game jam. So, game jams, you have 48 hours. They give you a theme, and you build a video game from scratch. The theme that we got in this particular jam was Eye of the Beholder. So we kind of took that and kind of went from, taking outside the game, and we looked at what gamers normally want to do and don't want to do. Somebody set these rules up a long time ago, and everybody's just followed them ever since. So we kind of joked around, and we're like, well, what if we just made a coin, and when you touched it, you exploded? So we tried to think about all the different things. We just kind of put those into the game. So it's modeled just like a Mario game. When you pick it up, your first thought is, oh, it's just another Mario clone. Let me go, play it. And then you hit a coin, you explode into pieces, and then you start having to retrain your brain on how you do it. So you have to jump on spikes, which actually make you bounce. If you fall through a hole, you'll fall through the ceiling, and different things like that. So it's funny to watch, people play and their first reactions on that, and then even as they play the game, you continually forget, don't touch the coins, so you keep getting them. And in other places, you actually die and you're like, what killed me? And then when you go back to that spot, you see the coins, you're like, I didn't even see them the first time. So, really we just tried to take that and play off of that. And it's been a fun, experience. And we just try to take from all the different games we grew up on, Mario, Donkey Kong, Sonic, all of those, and kind of just pick pieces and put it in without, being too blatant so we don't get sued or anything. So.
Well, let me ask you this. You said that you created this game in 48 hours in a code jam. So what do you develop a game in that you can get it done from start to finish in 48 hours?
So we have done Unity and things like that,
Okay.
but usually when we're using Unity, we have a bigger team. So this one was actually built in Game Maker. Our team originally was 4 people.
Okay.
Right now we're still about the 4 or 5, and then we've had help as we've continued. But yeah, we use Game Maker. It's a lot easier and faster to create games in. It is semi-limited, but we used that. And again, when we came out of the jam, we had about 3 levels done, a few different mechanics, and then it's been about a year of really perfecting it, redoing art, adding more mechanics, more levels, and things like that.
So what about commercial interest or anything along those lines? I mean, what do you see as the future of this game? Now that you guys have got it established, people are seeing it and things along those lines.
So right now we're just trying to finish it up so that maybe we can have the complete version. We're shooting for end of July, but it might be 1st of August. And then we're going to try to put it out there through Steam, through iOS, Android, things like that. We know that it has a catchy, aspect to it. With YouTube, it kind of blowing up on YouTube and having a lot of people play the game on there. But from there, we're just going to try to push it as hard by coming to events like this and getting it in people's hands.
Cool. Well, Josh, this next question is for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your game and how you created it, and somewhat along the same lines here with Britt? I just want to get some background on the game and what all is involved.
I want to talk about Britt's game. He went to a game jam where the theme was the 1990 RPG Eye of the Beholder, and he came out with a Mario clone. I think that you totally missed the mark.
But it's an inside-out Mario clone, though. It's like you die all the time.
I think they were very clear on their theme, and you went in a completely different direction. Literally. All right, so, yeah, Castle Kong was born from the King of Kong's documentary. When I saw the documentary, I was like, man, I love Donkey Kong. Why does nobody make games like that? Because if you think about the golden age of arcade gaming, why does Donkey Kong and Pac-Man hold up so well today? It's because the game theory is actually perfect. You don't need a quarter to play the game. The game in and of itself is the challenge, okay? Whereas anything after 1987, like TMNT and all the beat 'em ups and Street Fighter, are definitively tethered to the coin. The coin is what's holding your interest, because you want to beat Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for under $1, right? Like, I've got 4 quarters, how far can I get into this game? And once you remove the quarter from the experience, it's no longer interesting. I don't know, like, I think we all love TMNT 4, and we love all those, those Simpsons beat 'em ups and all that stuff that Konami ever pushed out. But at the end of the day, when it's free play, it loses its stress factor to it. That's sort of like, I need to survive and keep hitting these guys. And then it really exposes how flawed the game is when it's for free, right? Because you can't win on your own. You just have to keep pumping in your infinite lives. So my idea with Castle Kong was to I wanted to build an arcade cabinet, because I don't see people doing that now. Since I've started doing that, I realize a lot of people do that. There's nothing unique about what I'm doing, actually. But that being said, I wanted to build a game that was built off of the rules of Donkey Kong, but its own unique experience. So everything is familiar, but it's still insanely difficult, which, by the way, everybody says it's way too hard, and I hate you all for saying that.
What's the average game length on Castle Kong?
Nobody can get past the second tier of the first level. No one can get, there's 5.
It sounds pretty hard.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe I need to fix it. But yeah, that's the idea. The idea of Castle Kong was, what if instead of Mario saving a lady from an evil monkey, it's a pauper saving a princess from an evil baron, right? And he's scaling a castle wall instead of a construction site. But after that, the similarities end. The game mechanics are the same, but the what you're trying to do and how you're accomplishing it ends there, right? And so that's where that was born.
So let me talk a little bit, or let me ask a little bit about the development of the game. So we heard from Britt, how he's created his game. How did you create your game? What did you develop it in, and what was the time of development and testing, iterating, and everything like that?
So what you're looking at there is one guy working sparsely for about 6 months with a little bit of art help, made it in Unity, and then really what the fun part was. So I need to give a plug. Real quick. He was supposed to be here, but he couldn't make it. His name's Wayne. He has a custom cabinet company called Extension or RecRoomMasters.com. And I went to him. He's up in Lawrenceville. So I went to him with my harebrained scheme, and I said, would you build me a cabinet that's completely custom and custom art and all that stuff? And I found a girl who is a comic book illustrator, and she designed the side of the cabinet for me and all that. So with these 3 people, we built the cabinet. It took about 2 months to spec it out. And then the unit that runs it, this was where it got complicated, because you use custom arcade controllers, which is like some stuff that we're seeing here. You can order all that stuff online and route it to a USB controller and then plug that into a computer, but I didn't want a computer running it, so I found these like very simple $200 Android machines that boot straight into Android, and then took root access and made it go full screen. So it looks like a cabinet when it's booting up, like it loads up and then it goes straight into the game. So that's where that's what that's all about.
Cool. Well,
and it was made in Unity. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. So, are there any plans? Once you look at, I guess kind of finishing up the game or doing any kind of polishing that you want to do to it, are you planning on creating more copies of that game, or is this kind of like a one and done scenario?
Well, I mean, the dream was to get into Chuck E. Cheese, but now I think kids are just going to spit all over it. So I don't think anybody wants to play this thing. No, I mean the goal is to. The idea was to do a like a cross-platform leaderboard. So the idea is that you can't, if you play it on your PC or if you play it on your phone, you can't pause it. And if you do, if you get an incoming call, tough luck, you're not allowed onto the leaderboard. And the leaderboard would be handled by your Twitter handle. So when you're finished, you put in your Twitter handle, and @CastleKong will tweet at you and let you know that you've achieved like the 15th all-time high score. So everyone in the world who's following CastleKong would see, oh, this guy just set the all-time high score, and they could see your Twitter handle, which could gain you some followers and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, the goal is to be completely cross-platform. It would be PC, Mac, iOS, Xbox One, all that good stuff.
I'm kind of curious, in the vein that both of you guys have created your games in, I mean, have you been approached by any of the arcade legends that have been interested in your work? Have you talked to potentially Walter Day about documenting some of your work or anything along those lines? Because the way I see it is both of you guys represent what the classic video game scene needs in order to continue this style of gaming for future generations. I was kind of curious what the industry has contacted you guys about.
For me, not so much,
okay.
But I do events like this, and I've had several outside of the arcade industry, play the game. We've had like Cliffy B and a few other developers that are behind some of the bigger games with Xbox and things like that. Play the game, really love the game, and we've had developers from Sonic at MomoCon came over and played it, and they were ecstatic about it and things like that. But
okay.
We'd love to get some of those guys to play it. And
Walter Day's the guy behind Twin Galaxies, right?
Yeah.
So I reached out to him.
Yes.
I reached out to him. I'm pretty sure he receives email via like a carrier pigeon. First the email's printed out, then it's rolled up, and then a carrier pigeon delivers it to him because he is incredibly short with his responses and never gets back to you. So I've told him about it, but
okay.
I didn't get any love from them. But
if you could help us out by bringing our
bring
cabinets
Walter Day
side
here.
by side.
I have no special reach there, but we can try to help.
They're tough guys to get a hold of, but that's fine. I mean, that's fine. I have been getting it into some arcade stuff, so their arcade people have seen it, but no like big names. Billy Mitchell, by the way, also could not get past the second tier of the first level. Just so if you guys are comparing yourselves.
Right.
If you're comparing yourselves against the best, he also could not get past the second floor of the first freaking level. God, what is wrong with everybody? All right, so moving on.
So I'm kind of curious, what was his critique of your game? What did he say to you
he liked
when
it.
the game was over?
He didn't give it too much. He didn't play it for too long, but I think if he played it, he'd be fine with it. But yeah, he liked it. He liked what he saw.
That's cool. That's cool. So let's move over a little bit, if you guys don't mind, talk about pinball for a few minutes. So Jimmy, I'm kind of curious. Can you talk a little bit about Demolition Man 2000? What some of the inspiration was behind it? Time to develop, and really what you were after, in making that game.
Sure. So whenever I initially actually bought the Demolition Man, I got it home and realized that it had a lot of problems. There was some battery damage on the board, and kept trying to go into service menu, so I couldn't really even play a full game. And I'm a software engineer actually by day, so I decided, well, I'd like to actually try to program a custom rule set into it and see what I can do there and express a little bit of creativity, because everybody, I guess, has a little bit of a pinball designer dream within them. Kind of always wondered what their custom game would be like. So I kind of figured, okay, well, let's try that. And I tried the Arduino, hacked something together that looked very terrible, looked like something you would find in a Radio Shack catalog, and pieced together from those parts. And several solenoids later, realized that, all right, I'm probably barking up the wrong tree. And I saw this bald guy kneeling in front of a bunch of pinball machines online one time with a big board in his hand that looked like a WPC thing. And he called himself Jerry Stellenberg and called his company Pinball Controllers and said, hey, I sell this thing. And I said, well, I called him up on the phone, and ordered one of his boards, and it got there. And I installed it. It goes right in place of the WPC controller, and started within an afternoon, got a pretty much the game flipping with some basic scoring. The programming language is in Python, so I was able to really wire some things up pretty quickly. And I realized, well, there's already somebody out there with a custom Demolition Man, so that wasn't really unique enough for me. And you know, the dots were right up my alley, of course, because I can barely draw stick figures, so I figured if I could, you know, limit it to 4 dot intensities of, you know, horror, then maybe it would be passable. And I realized, okay, well, I'd always wanted a Pinball 2000, so I figured, well, let's make my own. And I had to re-engineer everything, actually. None of the framework was really designed for the Pinball 2000 stuff. It was all designed for DMD, so I had to, you know, rewrite some of that. And then it just really became a competition on how much bad 90s action movie footage could I fit into a pinball machine and make it relevant.
and make it relevant.
Exactly,
yes.
Make it relevant to the
That's the key
gameplay,
phrase.
right?
Yeah, make it relevant.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, you know, Sandra Bullock is Sandra Bullock in movie name. And you know, so it's like I could have probably pasted clips from Speed and clips from Demolition Man, and you probably wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. And you know, and then you know, you get all this Sylvester Stallone quotes in there, and it was a lot of fun. And it gradually grew in complexity, and I started coming up with, okay, well, you know, now I've got them laughing. The player is laughing at all of these crazy quotes. Now, how can I piss them off? And then I wrote a mode in that actually inverts the flippers, doesn't reverse them, it inverts them, so you actually have to press the flipper buttons in order to make them go down, so you release the buttons to flip. And generally...
man, I mean, my head would explode.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Gosh.
And, you know, originally it was actually for just a minimal amount of points. It was bad. And I put the audit reports on there, and decided, okay, well, how long does the game last once it enters that mode? And as a matter of fact, pretty much 90% of all games ended with that mode. Generally, it's straight drains, and it was terrible. And you know, it just grew from there. You know, we started doing plays on the characters' names. You know, we got a Simon Says mode in there that, you know, you have to mimic what the screen's doing, and it was a lot of fun. So the game, you know, gradually grew into a fun piece, and brought it out to the Atlanta Expo. And with it not being the typical Pinball 2000 design, myself and Matt Kaiser, courtesy of Titan Pinball, had to rewire the entire thing once we got it there, because all the boards are in the head. And I've got pictures of it, but we're not doing slideshows apparently, so just yet. So you have to rewire the whole thing whenever you unload it. So it was pretty interesting. So
let me ask you, so how much of Pinball 2000 is actually left inside of that?
None of it. So yeah.
0%? Wow.
None. You know, it was originally written on, you know, using C++ on a CRX Media GX machine designed for set-top boxes, actually, at the time. Was really what it was popular as.
Yeah.
I realized that a lot of people say, like, well, why don't you just tweak the rules to RFM? And don't realize, well, I have to completely reinvent everything that I do. You know, and the Pinball 2000 stuff, it was not usable. It was not usable. It was a lot easier just to take an off-the-shelf Linux system, spend maybe $200 on a basic machine and just, you know, throw a PC in there and get it going.
Wow. So what's the reception been to this game? I mean, how do people approach it? What do they say to you about it when they play it? I mean, are they confounded, or they say this is so cool, or what? I mean, what have you seen?
Well, those who don't get to the inverted flipper mode are generally very receptive of the machine.
And then it flips right after that. Pun intended.
They don't get that, and it's all awarded by chance. So you know, there's nothing you can really avoid doing it.
Yeah.
Falling into it. Reception has actually generally been very, very positive. And the thing that I like is I sat there and watched and, you know, kind of stalked the game at the Pin Swap last year, and a lot of little kids just love the game. You know, they were able to sit there, bat the ball around. You know, they get the flashing lights and sounds, and I mean, it didn't experience a second of downtime. So the reception in that sense was really positive. And from the older crowd, they want to know, how can I do that? How can I make it? And, you know, generally I say, well, you know, here's what it's designed. You know, here's all the source code for it. I mean, I'm giving the code away. I'm not selling the game or anything like that. I'm just like, here you go, take it.
Bake a cake, right?
Yeah, go, you know, and check it out, you know. It's been very positive.
Okay, I mean, at any point while you were working on it, did you say, man, this is a little bit more than I thought that it would be? And did you think about stopping or changing it midstream or anything like that? I mean, what was it like to have to push through all that?
Yeah, there was a big hiatus because you realize that, well, they don't make Pinball 2000 glass for a wide body.
Well, yeah, and I was just going to ask you, if there was anything left in it. I mean, those parts are extremely scarce, extremely valuable,
Right.
and I'm sure there's maybe a couple people sitting here going, man, I wish I could have got those parts. I don't know. You
Right.
know?
Right. So, I had to kind of DIY a lot of things.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the head, was actually the easy part. Again, my buddy Matt just said, hey, I'll take care of that. And before I know it, maybe a week later, he said, here's a full Pinball 2000 head that's designed for a wide body. So that took some of the stress off me. Now, I felt like giving up many times whenever I was writing software, trying to figure out how to marry the video into the game. And then there was just, again, the creative struggle.
Yeah.
Of it's like, all right, this is getting monotonous. All right, I'm tired of combos. I was like, all right, 90 combos and you get this mode. It's like that's not fun. So yeah, there was a lot of creative struggle there. And then sometimes you just have to walk away from it for a couple of days and then come back with your batteries recharged. But yeah, there was plenty of that. But time helps.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much. So, Paul, before we get into the esteemed guest that sits over to your far left there, and I'm sure there's going to be a story behind that, and I'm sure everybody's anxious to hear as well. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your background with the Pins and Vids series and what? And I know that you've worked on several custom games, and you're working on some right now. But can you talk a little bit about your collecting background and what led you and Al into creating the series, and then how that kind of went into the work that you're doing today?
Sure. First, I missed the facial hair memo. I'm feeling a little inadequate.
Don't worry, dude. I did too.
South, my friend. The beards are in.
Probably about 10 years ago, I met Al, who's in the back of the room.
Yep.
And,
hey, Al.
All because of another person in the crowd. James, it's all his fault.
Hey, James.
Center of the chaos.
But I was just getting the pinball bug and decided I wanted a whitewater. And James happened to have 3 at his shop that he was closing. And I went there, and Al was looking at an AFM that I thought he was crazy to buy. It seemed expensive to me. I was a newbie. And when Al and I met there, it just kind of kicked off a friendship, and he needed a co-host for it. It was really his idea. He had started it, and he needed somebody else to help him be silly on camera, and apparently in underwear on camera. I don't know how that happened, but the whole series kind of started with that, and we've done 4 so far. The last one, I meant to bring something to give away today, but it was actually a full DVD with a case. The first 3 were all for the Hall of Fame. We wanted to give back to the Pinball Hall of Fame, and he sold them, and all the money went to the building fund.
Okay.
And so that kind of got me into the video and the Pins and Vids side. And as my collection started growing, I'm a computer guy like Jimmy. I'm a programmer. And last year at the Pin Swap, we were playing NASCAR in the tournament. And Donnie White from Florida, some of you guys may know him, he made some comment about this would be a much better game if it was Talladega Nights themed.
Okay.
And I'm not a huge NASCAR fan. I may get booed for that. But I thought this would be great, a Will Ferrell pin. That makes perfect sense. And I started looking into how I could make that happen. And I think I had known Jimmy about that time, and he was telling me about the P-Rock boards.
Okay.
So within a week, I bought a P-Rock board, and with the assistance of Jimmy, had it flipping with minimal amount of effort. It was amazing how quick you could put the board in there, have it flipping and scoring with very minimal effort. And so that kind of kicked off the programming bug. And from that, I had enough confidence, I guess, to take on a slightly bigger project, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I guess.
Okay, it sounds good. Now, as far as the whole Talladega Nights project, I mean, where does that sit right now? I mean, are you still working on it? Do you have Will Ferrell doing the call-outs? Where does that sit? Because that would be awesome.
Well, he was actually filming Anchorman 2 in Atlanta, and I'm like, I should go down there and see if he'd be interested in something like this. And then I hear he doesn't like talking to anybody. So, but partially into the project, I had some lamp shows, it was flipping, and then I had an opportunity to work on the next project. So Talladega Nights, I have a video that we can show of the attract mode and a few things like that. Talladega Nights kind of got paused, and we started the next project. Eventually, I'll get back to it. I want to finish Talladega Nights. I bought the NASCAR machine solely for that purpose.
Okay.
So we're going to finish it hopefully in the next year or so.
Okay. Yeah, cool. And we'll talk about your next project here in just a little bit. I want to give the audience some time for some questions here in a few minutes, and then we can kind of delve into that because you've got a whole setup over there, and I want to make sure you got some time to talk through that. So, just out of curiosity, any of you guys, feel free to answer. So, what do you all think is going to be next for the boutique, I guess, kind of the boutique industry on games and custom games and things like that? How does it break out and become more mainstream? I mean, have you guys looked at investors or anything along those lines to help take things to the next level, or is this all just something that you just want to do out of the love for the game?
All right. Well, I think, to be completely fair about what we're doing, I think that it's dead. I think that arcades are dead, and you don't want to.
No, don't say
I
that.
really do. I'm not trying to be mean. They'll always have a place. Like, you'll always see stuff in Chuck E. Cheese, Dave and Buster's.
Yeah.
There is that thing. It's still around. But as a business model, it's dead. And I think when you make an arcade like what we're doing, like Default Dan, and what you're doing as a custom table, what you're really doing is you're doing it for the love. And then when people catch on to that, then you can monetize it in a different way. And that's how you have to approach making something like this. I cannot be making Castle Kong as my business model. The business model cannot be to make arcades. It's so complicated, and without, you got to sell it for 4 times the cost just in case parts break. And then you got to ship them the parts, and then somebody has to fix it. These aren't the 80s where the markups were so huge. Because a $5,000 machine in the 80s, I think they cost 10, right? Back in the day?
I
Like
don't
a
know.
new
I mean, I've
Donkey
seen
Kong?
bill of sales on some machines,
Yeah.
like on some home use only machines, and the prices will range from 20, and this is arcade games, from
Yeah, they were up to
$2,500 up to 35 or 4, somewhere right in there.
So, I mean, that money, think of that as like 20 to 50 grand today. Think about, like, to sell one game was like $20,000 to $50,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of, you can hire mechanics on that revenue. There's arcades all over the place. You want to be making stuff like this because you love it. And then when that catches fire, as so often indie efforts like what we do, and I think you've actually caught a little bit of fire with Default Dan. So like he caught fire already. The arcade is just sort of like the icing on top. That's how I view it. And I mean that in the nicest way. I don't, I think we're all here because we love arcades, but as a business model, it's just not a thing that you can continue.
Yeah. So what for you guys on the video side, what's your next project? What do you guys do next?
I guess with mine, and I guess the difference with Default Dan specific to maybe Castle Kong that was originally thought of in an arcade box. With ours, we're going to try to put it everywhere, and then we've got 5 or 6 other games that we've played around with and thought about, and we'll move on to one of those. But as he was saying with the business model, I mean, we're really shooting for some of the outside the arcades, and honestly, our box we built this week for the event specifically. Yeah. And so now we can take that to more events so people can see it. It helps with nostalgia and things like that. And actually, what's funny is when we do take it, just even in a PC, for all the other retro console gamers, we have a NES USB controller, which brings back the Mario thoughts while you're playing and things like that. So, it's definitely there definitely is something out there, and there'll be that one person that wants this cabinet in their house. But
they've got to pay.
But to the point of like really being able to go to the arcade down the street to put it in, I mean, you're limited, and it is good that there is a resurgence. So places like Joystick and some of those that are specific to that, there's places like that. But again, with something like that, they're not probably going to pay you $10,000.
Yeah, they're not. Not only are they not, but they make all their money on the beer. I mean, let's be honest. Like it's a catch to get people to come in and hang out. It's not the reason people are there.
Yeah.
So people don't play the games there. I mean, they do, but I've been there many nights, and I watch what people do, and they don't really play the games.
Yeah. Is that why they sell beer at Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah, probably. That's for the adults, right?
There was a day when that did happen. There was a day. Jimmy, I'm kind of curious. Thank you, sir. So, Jimmy, I'm kind of curious. What's your next project? I mean, when you look at the time involved for Demolition Man 2000, I mean, are you looking at using that same platform for your Pinball 2000 for your next project, or you say, been there, done that, kind of set that off to the side. Now here's what I set my sights on going forward.
Well, it balloons, right? People find out what you're doing, and then they kind of want your time. And so with that, since Demolition Man 2000, which was almost 2 years ago, whenever I started on it, I did the basic operating system for the P3 by Multimorphic, which is the interchangeable infrared grid tracking system. It's really cool. Check it out. Plug. And then
plug.
Yeah, right. And then I contributed to Cactus Canyon Continued. I did the operating system for Predator for that game. Did those, and then now it's ballooning into. I'm probably going to do another Pinball 2000. I'm working on the CAD files right now for Wizard Blocks, and I've already gotten pretty much a lot of the playfield artwork vectorized into a format where I can use it, and just doing a prototype of that. And a lot of times it turns into a me thing, which then grows from there, right? So that's what I'm doing. It's something I'm familiar with, and it will use much the same platform, because that's the only way you can really hit the cost margin, right? It's like it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel if you have something that works.
Well, now you mentioned vectorizing some of the artwork and playfield and things like that, and I'm curious from any of you guys that would want to answer this. Can you speak to the audience as to what skill sets do you need to get into developing your own game, whether it be vectorizing artwork, learning how to code, what should you learn to code in, what's some of the basic tool sets that you guys kind of accumulated for yourselves in getting started in doing this. And I just think it's neat that you can take something and create and whirl it all around and create something completely different. It's hard to do without having some basis.
The cool part is there's a lot of free tools out there that can help you along the way.
Okay.
And even if they're not free, there's you don't have to own a 3D printer. All of these were printed on a Replicator 2, which they have one in the other room. But you don't have to even own one to make something. You can always, there's online places like Shapeways that you can send them a model, and in a few days you'll have it in your inbox.
Okay. What do you create the model in, Paul? I mean, what piece of software do you use?
Well, I don't have the skills to do a lot.
Oh, okay.
I can do a little stick man, and that's about it in there. But we have some people on our team that are great in SolidWorks.
Okay.
There's free drafting program like Playfields. If you're doing a playfield, you don't have to buy AutoCAD.
Okay.
You can. There's something called DraftSite, which is free. That can generate the files, and you don't have to have a CNC machine. You can find a local maker shop or a maker space that might be around here where everybody shares tools, or there are places. I think it's like 100K garages, which you can find somebody local to you that'll let you use their machine for a small amount of money.
Yeah.
Where I have a problem myself is I want to try and do everything myself.
Yeah,
and
me too.
that gets me into trouble often.
Yeah. Takes a long time too.
Yes, and so. One piece of advice I would have is don't try and do it all yourself. Is find other people that are either doing similar things or can help you along the way. I've been fortunate enough to know Charlie from Spooky Pinball, who's doing the America's Most Haunted
America's
game.
Most Haunted, yes. Yeah.
And he helped us in our latest project, because I don't have the skills to CNC and clear coat a playfield, and one of the reasons he started Spooky Pinball was to help other people like us who are building their own games, whether it's one game or 1,000 games they ultimately want to build.
Yeah.
And so I've been fortunate enough to have people that were willing to help for reasonable amounts of money to help me get past the stuff that I just couldn't do on my own.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy, I'm kind of curious on your side. You'd mentioned doing a lot of development in Python and things like that. So, how did you learn? What did you use to learn that, and what are some of the tool sets that you use on your project?
So I'd learned how to program at a pretty young age.
Okay.
In the late '90s, whenever I was about 12 years old, I started learning various scripting languages. Yeah. And so that kind of bred into obviously eventually becoming deciding to make that a career. And whenever I had picked up the P-Rock, actually, that stuff was all done in Python. Okay. Technically you can use anything. You can control it with an Arduino if you want. The Python framework was already out there, and all I really had to do was make a blueprint for my rules and just script it up, and it's like a single line, and you can all of a sudden cue off a light show or, fire a coil. So the learning curve wasn't actually that big, and they had some tools that I could already go in and use and turn my, if I was doing a dot matrix game, turn my movie clips into DMD animations, and all of a sudden you'd see them right there on your dot matrix screen. So it was really minimal investment.
Okay.
As far as the programming aspect of it, and as far as the hardware engineering aspect of it, you just drop it in. You set a couple dip switches and to tell it what type of system, if it's a Stern or a Williams, and it goes and does its thing.
And even some of the big projects with P-Rock, they weren't developers originally.
No, so yeah, actually that's a good point, right? Like, so Cactus Canyon continued. A lot of folks have kind of seen that online, the color dot matrix for it, and kind of how much it's added to the game. The author Eric Kripke, was not a software guy at all. Actually, was pretty much he was a systems guy. So he was able to go in and kind of with a Python book, kind of learn how to put it all together, and then all of a sudden
copy paste.
And a lot of gray hair later. A lot of gray hair later. He was able to really come up with a polished game.
Yeah.
So I mean, it really didn't require that much. Just persistence is the biggest asset you need.
And there's a great community around some of these boards. I mean, the P-Rock community is incredible. I mean, Jimmy's part of it. It's the reason I've used it on projects, is that the support, everybody helps each other, and they figure out something new, a different way. Instead of using a DMD, how to use, HD video, and everybody learns and uses little pieces here and there. And it's just, if you try and go at it as a lone soldier, it'll drive you nuts.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, Josh and Britt, how about you guys? What's your tool set look like, and how'd you get started? How'd you get started with this? I see a couple children out here in the audience, and I think it'd just be neat to know how do you create a video game from scratch, or what do you use?
Well, first of all, kids.
Yeah.
Don't make me say when I was your age. Because when I was 13, that's when I started making games, when I was 13, and you had to write your own bitmap handler to draw stuff to the screen. So, times have changed.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. If you really want to make a game, everybody's got a tool of choice. You're talking about Game Maker. There's a couple other Game Salad and stuff. But, download Unity, download whatever. Get a visual scripting tool. You don't even need to learn to code. It's absolutely incredible what people are doing, and they're doing it for nothing. You can get assets, like the Unity asset store, you can get a whole world of assets to build a game for like $10 and just make it, just make something for fun, because that's where it all comes from anyways. It all comes from the heart. So, you start with that. You start with these tools like Unity and these visual scripting tools, and just go from there. And then when you catch something, people will notice, and then you'll get the money that you need to turn it into something professional if that's what you want to do with it. But that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I would totally agree on that. I mean, growing up, I always wanted to build video games, but I never really went down that path. As I went into college, school, and things like that, I stayed more with websites, IT, less on the video games, just because kind of looking at it from at that time, it was like, all right, well, if you want to do video games, you have to be on one of these huge companies, that are producing Halo or whatever. But then probably in the last year or two, it's been this huge boom of the indies. And really with that, people are finding these tools. Like Game Maker has several different editions, but they have a free edition that you can download and play with. And there's Game Salad was another one.
Unity is free.
And so, these guys are just downloading these programs, learning it. As far as the way we started and the team was formed, we went to a game jam. So I heard about the game jam, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. And it even said, you don't have to be a coder, you don't have to be an artist, just come in, find a team. That's kind of where I found myself, of being like, hey, I can design, I have ideas, and met up with one guy who could code really, really well, met up with one guy who could do some art, and that's where it started. And we see more and more people coming out of those, with that excitement, and that's really what you need, is the excitement for building something you want to build.
Yeah. Okay. It's really good, because you guys, you take the initiative and you pour a lot of I think what we see as love for nostalgia back into these modern tools and create the types of games, whether it be pinball or video arcade, that keep us interested for another 20 or 30 years. I mean, we're all still playing pinball and still playing Donkey Kong and Pac-Man for a reason. Yeah. The games have got the game, that type of game has got its draw. It really does. So, Paul, you've got Animal sitting over to your left, and before we get into that, because I know there's a story here with Animal here, and we talk a little bit about some of the props and some of the some of the playfield items that you've got sitting in front of you. I want to take a few minutes and open some questions and answer sessions up to the audience. If you guys have got anything you want to ask these gentlemen here about doing game design or doing development or anything, just if you don't mind, just go ahead and walk up here to this wireless mic, and we'll certainly cover it.
Crickets.
Anybody?
Too easy.
I actually have one question for the guys over there. So we do arcades and they do pinballs, but I know the question was asked earlier.
Are we supposed to hate each other, by the way?
Yeah, it was like
Is there a rivalry?
So we had the question asked earlier of where did we see the arcades, and were we building these to put them out for money and things? And I know our world's a little different. We can build a video game, we can put it in the indie store and see what happens. But as far as pinball, I mean, where do y'all see it? I know you're building these all day, so there has to be somewhere you're selling these or doing something with them. But what does your world look like compared to ours?
Well, pinball is better in person, physical. It's a physical game. And, I think you guys have a great option of going the app route and doing things like that people can play in other media.
Huge difference, isn't it?
And while pinball has the Pinball Arcade, which is light years ahead of anything that was out there before in a virtual format, for us, physical is the only way to go.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a little bit of an upswing now on, you see it with the boutique games. The P3, that whole game, it takes it completely light years ahead of where it is. And then you have people doing retro style games. I mean, they even remade, what was it, King, it was an EM game that they built extras of and sold, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. And I think it's more of a, while I think on location they can maybe still work, I think it's more of a collector's, a home market. And I even think Stern at some point thinks that's where, I mean, I don't know what percentage comes from home buyers, but I bought a new in-box game, and I try and play wherever I see them, but you don't see them very often out there.
No, you don't.
And I think there's more availability now of pinball machines. There's more these boutique ones going out, and who knows if there'll be 50 or 100 or 1,000 of these boutique games that get made. But I think I love that it's feeling like it's at least growing. I don't know if it'll continue that way or not, but it has to be more physical for this for some reason. Yeah. Well, everybody knows what she's saying.
What are your thoughts on Zen Pinball? How do you feel?
Zen, I've never played it, so I
never played it.
Yeah.
All right. What about? They have these tables now that's like a screen, right? What do pinball people feel about?
Like virtual
pinball, but
yes.
It's with actual physical buttons, right?
Yeah. My whole problem is the delay in the buttons from the time you hit that button. Now, once you get used to it, you can play a virtual pinball fine, and then you go back to a real game and you're screwed until you get used to that.
Yeah.
But it's, they have their place. If you can't own a pin for space or monetary reasons, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've seen with just Pinball Arcade. I even own pinball. I buy every game on Pinball Arcade because I want to support both the video game and the pinball side. And it's good to learn the rules. If you play competitively, you can sort of do that in a virtual manner if you don't own the game. But yeah, from the transfer from the buttons to the actual virtual world is difficult for me to get used to.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed in playing the virtual pinball machines, it's the depth of the play field. It's not there, and because the entire screen is flat, you almost have to envision the depth just based upon how you see everything, all the playfield artifacts kind of stacked on top of each other, and the resolution of the screens. I mean, they're very big screens, but you just don't get the resolution. The playfield just doesn't look sharp, not at all like you would hope that it would in order to be that way. So, but yes, sir, we've got a question over here.
Well, I don't know if this is on. It is.
Yeah.
So my name's Troy. My partner over here is Paul. This is our first expo that we've been to. We actually have a custom table on the floor, Chameleon Pinball. And
Cool.
it's along the same lines as to what y'all are discussing right now. So our big question is, now that we have a prototype, we've got a working model, and we want to take it to the next step, where do we go? And you know, it's one thing to have it as a hobby, but how do you make it a business? And I'm hearing some ideas, but I'm not really hearing a lot of tangible things. Now, I drove to this point yesterday. I had an opportunity to talk to Barry Auersler afterwards, and I asked him the same question. Given where Stern is, you know, enterprise licensed corporation, you know, major funding or licensing done through corporations, how do you get back to where he was imagining what a pinball could be? He had, you know, a series of cyclones and pinbots and things of that nature. And he said he feels that the interest is there, and you just need to go ahead and do it, and go ahead and just go with what your vision is and take it forward from there. But he really didn't say where there was. And so I was trying to see if you guys could help, you know, brainstorm or give us some more ideas, since you've been in it a little longer than we have, it sounds like, as to, you know, how do we take it to the next level? How do we move it beyond a hobby into a business? So does anybody have any suggestions, recommendations, ideas along that line?
Okay, so first, okay, go ahead. Sorry. Well, so, you know, the first question is, okay, do you want to turn your hobby into a business? And realize the ramifications therein, right? And second off, if you decide to plow right through that and you know, say you want to go at it, I've seen your system, actually, and it looks really, really good. So my recommendation there is innovate as much as you can. Push the limits of your architecture. I mean, and if you're taking it to an expo and it doesn't have any bugs, you've demoed too late. And I mean, really, that's generally the rule, right? I mean, you know, ship and ship often, right? You see a lot of people, even in the industry, they're still trying to put out 4 games a year. Just trying to keep the interest there. Now, obviously, try to come up with a business model to where you can probably remain bootstrapped as much as possible, because VCs, get used to the word no, right? You know, and you will go through 50 VCs before you probably hit one that says yes. And, you know, always eat the free food that they offer, because they're not going to say yes to you or no to you regardless, you know, based on your demeanor there. And again, you know, try to come up with a hook, right? You're already operating in a niche market. You know, it's really, really tough sell, so come up with things that even if it's nostalgia, right? You could be producing EMs and still find a market there if you find people that want to preserve that section. If you can, of course, sell to a VC that, you know, they're going to be able to turn enough units to, you know, they have a wide enough market to make some profit off of. But, you know, drive, and, you know, bootstrap yourself as much as you can until you find, you know, capital. And don't give up on it, right? You know, because you'll go through the trough of sorrow of entrepreneurship, and then, you know, you'll find a niche market, and you'll find your place. You know, average ROI is going to be at least 2 years.
Yeah, and when I look at the people building games now, what seems to take the longest and they struggle with most is the manufacturing, the assembly line. Right. My advice is, like, I've consciously decided I don't want to build an assembly line. No. I'll build some prototypes, we'll build some samples, but I'm going to have somebody else build it. And luckily, you have people like Charlie from Spooky Pinball, who part of his business is to help others, and you may want to talk to him about would he be interested in partnering with you guys to do an actual run of X number of them. But, you know, everybody, even no matter how big they are, they seem to struggle with, okay, building them. Either they can't build them fast enough, or they take a long time to actually create their assembly line. I wouldn't try and recreate that side of it. I would make your game the best you can and find somebody else to partner with to build them.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that everybody's story when it comes to this kind of stuff is mimicked. I mean, you gotta go knock down 1 million doors. I mean, nobody can. The reason why nobody can tell you how to do it is because nobody knows how to do it. Even the people who did it can't even look back and figure out how they did it. It's so hard, and it just requires being out there and 1 million people saying your thing, and then finally somebody goes, "That's the thing I want to push," you know. So, like, my suggestion, even though it's completely different market that I know nothing about, but yet all markets are the same, you know. You got to get to the place where there's a lot of people like an E3, you know. You got to spend the money to get there, put your product where people can see it, and push and sell you as well as the product to people who matter, you know what I mean? and that's just how it is for everybody. Everybody has to deal with that.
Yeah, and I would follow that up with, even like with our game. It kind of blew up on YouTube. It's 10 million plus views, things like that. But really what it was just coming to events like this. We got it in the hand of the one person that said, hey, I'll do a review. They got 300,000, 400,000 views, which then led to one guy putting up one video that got 7 million views, and then from there it just blew up. So it's kind of like, it's just finding that one person that loves your game, and then from there, them telling somebody who tells somebody, and then it just goes from there, and that's really the big thing.
And be prepared to fail.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, any further questions? Yes, sir.
I've got a quick one for the video guys. You brought up a really good point earlier that the classic games, what really makes them great is the game engine, and some extent the control. So you think about a game like Robotron and how 2 joysticks can make a really complex but really good game. Do you guys ever think about going back to some of the Eugene Jarvis creations or things like that and kind of riffing on that stuff? Or
Can you give me an example? I'm sorry.
Sure, yeah.
I'm only 35.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked, because I'm only 27. So.
He has no idea.
So a couple of examples, like Tempest with a spinner.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Another one is Major Havoc. That has
Love those
the roller
games.
controller.
Yeah, those are my favorites. The
720
vector-based
with the-
stuff too,
Yeah.
you know, like Battle Zone and things like that. I would love to do that, man. I'm one guy working in my, not technically a garage, my office, but I'm one guy, and I've got 5 projects I'm working on that I work on whenever I have free time. So that would be so much fun and doable. Actually doable today, because those parts all exist. You can buy them from Sanwa, you can buy them from X Arcade, even though they're the worst company in the world. Don't buy from them, but you can buy them from them, but don't. But you know, all those parts exist, and all of the feedback, you know, when it's piped through the USB, is straight up analog or digital feed, whatever you need to do that stuff. So that would be a lot of fun. I would definitely brainstorm on that topic. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree. And even when you take it outside of arcades and you go to just even some of the mobile stuff, I'm seeing more of the 2-stick shooters where the sticks are on the screen. You know, you have that whole touch screen kind of thing to where people can do some of the, you know, the dials and 2 buttons, things like that. You know, a lot of people ask us, like, how does your game actually translate on a mobile device? And it is a little different when you're looking into that world. But essentially, we took away one of the buttons. We took away the run button. We give you the gradual Mario run, so it feels really good. So we just give you a left, right, and a jump on one side. It works really well. There's another game we played around with for a while with a 2-stick shooter kind of game. Works very well. So it's definitely one of those that when you start bringing back the nostalgia, even with the way it looks, I'm seeing more and more games that are coming out like 8-bit, 16-bit, and they're, you know, blowing up. I mean, Minecraft definitely is probably the biggest one example you could show, but I'm seeing RPGs even like that, and people are like, oh yeah, this reminds me of, you know, the original Final Fantasy, or, you know, so some of those, and it's definitely, I think nostalgia is one thing if you can capture.
2 things though. There is a vector-based plugin for Unity, which I have. It's really cool. But the other thing is, just to speak specifically to Tempest and Battlezone, you can't do that anymore because of the way those monitors were designed. So you can't actually get that incredible vector crisp. It's incredible. It's so beautiful. It's hard to describe what it is I'm looking at when I look at it, but they don't make displays like that anymore. So you'll never truly be able to replicate that look, but you can do things that mimic the look. Yeah.
Okay, well, and thank you guys for the question. So, I mean, our time has just really flown here. So we've got about 10 minutes or so left. So if Paul and Jimmy, if you guys don't mind, just to talk a little bit about some of the equipment and some of the things that we're seeing down here on the table. Curious to hear the story behind Animal sitting in the chair there as well. And it'd be really good just to kind of give the audience a run through on what you guys have brought and why you've brought it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so some of the equipment, really quickly, sitting in front of me, I have a couple of prototype boards, and then, of course, the P3 system's been on the market for about 5 years. As a matter of fact, this is the pretty much the P3 Rock. It replaces your WPC, or your actual CPU, actually in your game, and connects to a chain of serial boards, very low footprint. And then we have, again, you know, the switch matrix controller. This controls your entire 8x8 matrix. I don't get a paycheck, by the way, for any of this. So, I mean, it's, but anyway. And then you have your driver boards. Now, these, again, you can control 16 drivers off of these. You can do lamp matrices. You can do coils. As a matter of fact, and you'll notice that it's got an extremely small footprint, so it's designed to be mounted near where the assemblies are located to prevent long wire runs. And again, it's all like 2-wire.
And you chain them together.
Yeah, you
so
chain them, yeah.
If you have another crazy idea and you need another couple coils or another couple switches, you just pop another board into the system. So you can be as crazy as you want to be practically and not run out of bandwidth to do it, basically.
Yep. And if you duct tape all of those together, you get this. And I think Ben Heck would be okay with me saying that. Yeah, so, and then, as a matter of fact, this is pretty much the system on a board here. This is the Ben Heck, or the Pin Heck board, I believe is actually what
the
they're
Pin
calling
Heck
it.
board.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Pin Heck board. This is what's actually the brains behind America's Most Haunted, those types of games. And it's coming out here pretty quickly. And again, it's everything on one board. So if you're okay with the longer wire runs, you have a simpler game without as much, as many mechanics or a fairly decent-sized switch matrix. You can connect all to this board, and this mounts back in the Mac box, similar to the configuration that you're used to. And
so I have a few. I talked about 3D printers. We use those to build. These aren't pinball parts. I've printed flippers. I've printed star posts. I wanted to joke around at one point. I'm like, I'm going to put Rick out of business and put a little star post out there. But that took 45 minutes to print. There's no way you can make large volumes of stuff. So it's great for prototyping. One of the things we did is with the play fields, we'll talk about Animal here. Animal, this was, for those of you that were at Louisville or the Ohio show, Python Anghelo, who did Pinbot and Bride of Pinbot with both of the designers that are here. This was in the background of all of his Skype talks. And he goes to shows with James and I. He's our little traveling companion. And the tie-in is, I was fortunate enough to become good friends with Python, and the game that always got away from him was Pinball Circus. It was a game he always wanted to see made. And over the last year or so, I was fortunate enough to work together with and be part of a team that is going to make Pinball Circus a reality for Python. And so these playfields, the playfield you see here is actually the first assembled mini playfield from Pinball Circus. This is the clown back box game, and it is the most densely packed mini playfield I have ever touched. And these are some of the other small playfields. And like I mentioned before, I didn't have the skills to do these myself. It took a team of 7 of us to put everything together to get these done. And Python was fortunate enough to see all of this before he left us. And in fact, Charlie, Python ended up in the hospital in January. And 3 days before I got up there, he was nearly catatonic. And John Trudeau, Greg Ferris, and Steve Ritchie, I believe, showed up. And it was like a light switch. There was Python again. And 2 days later, Charlie drove these down. We weren't sure Python was going to get out of the hospital. And we wanted to make sure Python saw these playfields. And Charlie from Spooky drove them down, physically delivered them with Ben Heck. They're both great Python fans.
Yeah.
And I got a photo in the slide deck of Python holding all of these. And that day he was also discharged from the hospital and went home to his apartment. And he declared it one of the best days of his life. And that's why we're doing this. It was a passion of Python's. It's a passion of James and I and the rest of the team. And we're in the middle of building the 2 Whitewoods now.
Okay. Can you speak any to some of the research that you guys have done in order to finish the game from Python's original vision? What has been required to take Python's vision and get it to the point to where it is today and to actually finish the game?
So I feel like part archaeologist and part psychologist going through this whole process. So part of it was I had to learn as much as I could about the game, and I never touched one originally when this started, but I knew that there were things that Python intended for the game that we're taking out. One of them is the snake. So this is one of the original snake plastics, and if you've ever played Pinball Circus either at the Hall of Fame or at one of the events that it's come to, the flippers were kind of off kilt. They weren't in a normal position.
Yeah, they were offset.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the best that I can tell is the prototypes were built after Python left to go to Capcom. And you can see that in, part of the archaeologist part was we can see the changes in the drawings where the initials. So every change had the initials of the designer and the date that the revision was made. And it was PVA, Python Vladimir Anghelo. You kept seeing that. Yeah. And then you saw Steve Kordak's initials. And that was a year after Python had left to go to Capcom at that point. Okay. So we're about ready to find out if they took this out for monetary reasons or because shots didn't work. But the snake was supposed to be in between the two flippers and the player could control it Python wanted it to be a pelvic switch. He wanted you to give it a little
give it a little nudge.
I'm still trying to figure out the mechanics of that. But so we intend to. We were fortunate enough to spend large amounts of time with Python, and he went through every aspect of the game and has entrusted us enough. He gave us the framework, and he said, "Here, you guys take it the rest of the way." And we're doing this for Python. Our intentions, we're building the 2 Whitewoods. We're going to build 12 sample games. And our intentions are to hopefully put this in production after that point. We're in discussions of anybody. There's some discrepancies on who might actually own the rights.
Okay.
But we're talking to everybody. It's going well. We do think it's going to happen.
Any kind of, I guess, ETA that you could feel comfortable sharing? I mean, what do you think the audience could expect from a timeline perspective before they see this finished?
I guess I'm going to throw out a date now just to make me try and meet it.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'd like to have it flipping and bring it to Chicago Expo this year.
Oh, that's
it won't be complete, but I'd like to bring the Whitewood
okay.
and show it off there, and go from there. It's a passion project for all of us involved in it, and there are many of us involved. It's we're fortunate enough to have a great engineer that's working with us. He helped us get all of these play fields because the files to these we couldn't find. They didn't exist. We're not sure where the CAD files are, so we had to recreate all of this from measurements, from other drawings we had, and it's been truly a team effort to get to where we are, and that's what it'll take to get to the finish line.
Well, this will be a project worth watching and something to see unfold, because the sheer fact that this is going to make it into existence says volumes. It really does, for Python and for you guys. Yeah. So thank you for everything that you guys are doing. So I'm sorry that we've ran over a little bit of time, but I mean, this discussion has been wonderful. Are there any closing questions before we go ahead and let these guys go?
You can see Pinball Circus on YouTube.
Yeah, if you've never seen the game, it's not a traditional pinball game by any means. And Python always said that's what scared Williams and why it was never made, is it's in a more arcade cabinet. If you can picture a Terminator 2, one of those gun games, it's in a cabinet similar size to that's been slightly modified. And it's got 5 pieces of wood in it that all have the ball interact with it. It's got basically 5 play fields on multiple levels. It's one of the, if you ever get a chance to play the original one at the Hall of Fame, definitely play it. There are some differences, like, the snake we're going to put in there. There were things in the way Python wanted it to work that got taken out for various reasons in the prototype, and we're planning to put all those back in and be able to show people this is what Python envisioned this game to be, and take it everywhere we can so that people can experience that.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you all for your time today. We really appreciate it. Let's give all these guys a round of applause. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.